Have you ever stopped chasing her? Not out of anger, not to play games, but because something inside you said no more. And suddenly she acted different. Seeing, women are used to being pursued. They're used to a man reacting, chasing, proving. But when you don't, when you remain composed, detached, and silent, something shifts, not just in her perception of you, but in her own mind. In this video, we're diving deep into what she actually thinks when you stop chasing her, and why your stillness, when rooted in self-respect and stoic calm, speaks louder than any words. Let's get started. No one. Wait, he's not reacting. At first, it's confusion. She's used to men jumping in to fix things, to beg, to explain, but you didn't. You observed. You let the silence hang, and now that silence echoes louder than any paragraph. You could have texted. You didn't react because you've outgrown emotional impulses. That's Stoicism in motion, and it doesn't go unnoticed. She expected a chase, a flood of messages, a late night "I miss you," or even a dramatic plea for clarity. But instead, she's met with your calm, your restraint, your absence of chaos. And that's when something interesting happens in her mind. She starts to wonder, did I misread him? Did I overplay my hand? The very lack of your pursuit creates a new energy, one she didn't anticipate. You see, in a world where everyone's fighting to be heard, the man who stays silent speaks volumes. When you don't chase, you force reflection. She replays her words, her tone, the last message she sent. She analyzes the moment she pulled back, and suddenly she's no longer sure she was the one in control. From a Stoic point of view, your peace isn't something you offer up for negotiation. You didn't withdraw to manipulate. You simply decided that your self-respect was more valuable than getting dragged into emotional tug-of-war. That's strength. That's choosing inner order over outward validation. Imagine this. A man once told me he didn't reply to a message where she tried to subtly provoke him, not because he was mad, but because he saw it for what it was, a test. And instead of reacting emotionally, he went for a walk, breathed, and reminded himself, I don't need to explain my worth. That's how a Stoic man moves, with clarity, not chaos. So when she says, wait, he's not reacting, what she's really asking is, why isn't he chasing me like the others? And that thought, it lingers. It challenges her assumptions because now the attention she was so sure she had has become uncertain. And uncertainty, when it comes from a man who values himself, is power. Let her feel it, not out of revenge, but because you finally realized you're not here to prove anything. You're here to protect your peace. And she'll think about that longer than you ever could have planned. Number 2. Did I misread his interest? Now, she second guesses everything. The conversations, the chemistry, the connection. Was it real? Your distance forces her to replay everything, trying to find where the energy shifted. Meanwhile, you stay still, composed, because you're not looking for constant reassurance. You're looking for something real or nothing at all. See, most men rush in. They over-explain. They chase. They try to undo the space. But when you don't chase her, it sends a message louder than any words could. It says, I don't need to convince you of my worth. I showed up with sincerity. If you doubted it, that's your burden to carry. And suddenly, what she once felt sure about begins to feel uncertain. Not because you played a game, but because you didn't. You simply stopped proving and started observing. Maybe she expected a text after her cold reply. Maybe she thought you doubled down when she pulled back. But you didn't. You let her feel the absence. And that's when her mind starts spiraling. Was he just being polite? Was it never that deep for him? She starts scrolling through old messages, reading into pauses, emojis, the way your tone suddenly shifted. She's looking for a sign, but the only sign is your calm withdrawal. That's Stoicism. You don't flinch at rejection. You don't panic at the unknown. You respect your emotions, but you're not ruled by them. And that unnerves her, because she's used to seeing men get emotionally reactive. She's not used to meeting a man who knows how to hold his ground, especially when things get vague or confusing. The irony is, your stillness creates more movement in her mind than your words ever could. When you stop chasing, she starts thinking not about power games or who wins. She starts wondering why you were able to walk away so easily. And in that wonder, she begins to understand that maybe, just maybe, you weren't the one who misunderstood the connection. Maybe she did. Number 3. He must be talking to someone else. The moment you don't chase, the mind races. Maybe you found someone better. Maybe you moved on quicker than she expected. But here's the truth. You're not chasing anyone. You're focused inward, letting time and peace guide your next move. That's a rare kind of strength, and it doesn't go unnoticed. At first, she might brush it off. Tell herself you just got busy. But days go by, the consistency she once took for granted is gone. Your good mornings, your check-ins, the little signs that she still held space in your world vanished. That's when her thoughts start shifting from casual to anxious. Is he seeing someone else? Did he replace me that easily? Because in her mind, that's the only explanation for your calm distance. She doesn't realize that your stillness isn't about another woman. It's about the man you've become. You're not using absence to manipulate. You're not detached because you're playing a game. You're detached because chasing what doesn't value you is beneath the man you've been working hard to become. That's where Stoicism quietly steps in. A Stoic man doesn't react based on fleeting emotions. He acts based on principles. He knows that being needed isn't the same as being respected. And if your presence is taken for granted, the most powerful thing you can do is remove it, not with anger, but with composure. Let me give you a real-world example. A friend of mine had been talking to a woman who slowly began pulling away short replies, less interest, passive energy. Instead of confronting her or chasing for clarity, he simply matched her energy. He didn't ghost her, but he didn't overextend himself either. 2 weeks later, she messaged him out of nowhere. I guess you found someone who gives you more attention. The irony? He hadn't even been thinking about anyone else. He was simply reclaiming his peace, focusing on his business, getting in shape, and reconnecting with himself. But to her, his absence screamed replacement. That's the twist. When you no longer chase, she doesn't just think you're busy. She thinks you've moved on. And that creates a tension in her mind that no explanation can soothe. The calmness you maintain becomes a mirror she's not ready to look into. It shows her that you were never desperate, just present. And now that your presence is gone, she realizes it held more value than she admitted. So if you're sitting in that quiet space, wondering if pulling back was the right thing to do, trust that it was. You're not punishing her, you're preserving yourself. And in a world that praises quick replies and instant validation, your discipline stands out. She may not say it out loud, but in her silence, in her curiosity, in her sudden urge to check your profile, she's already saying it. You're not talking to someone else, but in her mind, you just might be. And that's what makes your stillness unforgettable. Number 4. Why isn't he trying to fix it? She expected you to reach out, to apologize, to ask what went wrong. But you didn't. Not because you didn't care, but because you've learned not to cling where you're not valued. Like a Stoic, you let go with dignity. You don't chase chaos. You protect your peace. This is the part most women don't anticipate. They're so used to men rushing in with apologies, desperate to explain, to make it right, even when they were the ones hurt. But you didn't give her that familiar pattern. You didn't offer the comfort of knowing you'd still fight for her, no matter how she treated you. And that's when the shift begins. Because when a man doesn't chase, a woman starts to wonder what she lost. You see, real strength isn't loud. It's not begging, not proving, not performing. Real strength is calm, still, moved, like the Stoics taught. When something is outside your control, you let it go. You don't argue with reality. You don't try to force your way back into someone's life just to feel worthy. You become worthy by how you carry yourself when things don't go your way. And now, your silence is speaking not out of spite, not as a game, but because you've finally chosen yourself. You've realized that being emotionally available doesn't mean being emotionally vulnerable to disrespect. She might scroll through old messages. She might wait for the text that never comes. And in that silence, a question starts to echo louder and louder. Why isn't he trying to fix this? Here's the truth. Because fixing something that broke your spirit is no longer your responsibility. You step back to observe, not to react. You've stopped rescuing people from the consequences of their own actions. And that quiet confidence you now carry, it's unfamiliar to her. It's unsettling. Because in her mind, your absence doesn't just mean you're gone. It means you've outgrown the need to be understood by someone who never truly saw your value in the first place. Imagine she checks her phone one night, expecting your name to pop up, but it doesn't. Days pass, then weeks. You don't block her, you don't stalk her socials. You simply disappear from the emotional equation. And that's when she begins to spiral. Not because you punished her, but because you didn't. Stoicism teaches that we must train our emotions, not be ruled by them, that we must respond, not react. And when you chose not to fix it, what you really did was fix yourself by removing your energy from places that drained you. So if you're sitting there wondering whether she's thinking about you, trust me, she is. Not just because you're silent, but because your silence has meaning, because it carries self-respect, because it's not just a pause, it's a decision. And in a world full of noise, that kind of inner stillness, it leaves a lasting impression. Number 5. Was I just temporary? Now, she's questioning her place in your life. Why was it so easy for you to walk away? But let's be clear, it wasn't easy. It was necessary. You didn't leave because you didn't care. You left because you reached a point where your peace became more important than proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. And when a man finally understands that his energy is sacred, that his time is valuable, he stops giving it away to people who only show up halfway. She might think you vanished to make her miss you, but it wasn't a tactic. It was clarity, decision made not from bitterness, but from stillness. You didn't ghost her out of spite. You simply stopped showing up where effort felt one-sided. That shift in energy is louder than any argument. You didn't send paragraphs. You didn't chase. You just stepped back. And in doing so, you said everything you needed to say without saying a word. See, we live in a world where men are often told to prove, to pursue, to fix what's broken. But there's a quiet power in restraint, in recognizing when something no longer aligns with your values. That's Stoicism in practice. Not detachment from emotion, but control over reaction. You didn't let your feelings lead you into desperation. You let reason lead you into self-respect. And that self-respect is what she didn't expect. Because most people can't imagine love without chase. But you prove that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about knowing when to let go. She may smile on the outside, act unfazed, pretend she's moved on. But in her mind, the question lingers. Was I just temporary to him? The irony. You were never the one treating her like a temporary option. But now, your absence makes her face a truth. She didn't prepare for that. Maybe you weren't the one trying to prove your worth. Maybe you were the prize all along. And she only realized that when you stopped showing up. This isn't about playing games. It's about living by a principle. If love requires you to lose yourself, it's not worth keeping. You don't chase what walks away from peace. You become peace. You walk like a man who knows what he brings. And if she couldn't see that, then your silence isn't rejection. It's revelation. Oh 6. Maybe he's too confident. She notices you're calm, unshaken. You're not out here proving anything. You're just living, building, focused. That quiet confidence, that unnerving stillness, it's the mark of a man who doesn't need external validation. You're not arrogant, you're anchored. And that shakes her more than she expected. Because let's be real, most men, when a woman starts to pull away, chase harder, they double down, over, explain, try to win her back with words, gestures, even desperation. It's not always loud, but it's obvious. That subtle energy of, please don't leave. And for a while, she probably thought you'd do the same. She expected you to notice the shift and panic, to send a late night, "Are you okay?" message, to try and fix the tension. But you didn't. And now she's confused and a little intrigued. Your silence didn't come from pride. It came from peace, from self-awareness. Like a Stoic, you understand that chasing someone who isn't matching your energy is a betrayal of your own self-respect. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." You know, her interest, her mood, Her validation, that's not in your hands. But how you respond, that's all you. So instead of chasing, you chose to observe. Instead of explaining yourself, you let your presence or your absence do the speaking. You didn't need to convince her of your worth. And that right there is what sets you apart. She starts to wonder, maybe he's too confident. But what she's really seeing is a man who values himself. A man who doesn't fear loss. Because he never begged for what wasn't offered freely. You're focused on your path, on your mission, the version of you that doesn't just talk about strength, but lives it. And the more she senses that you're not chasing, the more she replays the last few interactions. Was she too cold? Did she misread you? Why aren't you trying to win her back like others did? It's not that you didn't care. You just care more about your peace than about clinging to someone who's unsure about you. That confidence, it's not a performance. It's who you are. Stoic, grounded, unapologetically focused. And in a world that praises noise and attention-seeking, your stillness becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you found a strength and stillness that most never will. And she feels it now more than ever. Number 7. I thought I had the power. Suddenly, she realizes she miscalculated. You're not waiting on her. You're not orbiting her decisions. You're not performing for attention. And that shift, it breaks her script. She was used to men chasing, explaining, proving. She expected that if she pulled away, you'd follow. But instead of clinging, you stayed grounded. You didn't react emotionally. You didn't try to win her back. You simply continued your path, as if her approval wasn't your finish line. And that changes the entire dynamic. Now she's left wondering, did I overestimate my hold on him? Because here's the truth. When you don't chase her, it's not just about the distance. It's about the signal. The signal that you're not ruled by impulse, that you don't hand your power to someone just because they're beautiful or emotionally confusing. You're not in a panic to keep anyone who's unsure about you. That calm detachment, that's the essence of Stoicism. Like Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. She was the outside event, and you chose not to react. Let me give you an example. Think of a guy who used to text her good morning every day, who would double text when she delayed replying, who tried to decode her moods just to stay close. Then one day, he stops. Not in anger, in spite, but in clarity. He saw the imbalance and quietly stepped back. That silence, it's not empty, it echoes. And she hears it in the absence of his attention. That's when the power shifts. That's when she starts thinking, nah, not because you chased, but because you didn't. That's the beauty of not chasing. You leave space for her to realize your worth on her own. And sometimes that realization stings more than anything. You could have said, no, wait, what is he thinking right now? While you move forward, she stays stuck in, overthinking, wondering if you miss her, if you feel anything at all. But the truth is, you've mastered something powerful. The art of emotional discipline. While she spirals, you remain still. And that stillness, it draws curiosity like a magnet. Because when a man doesn't chase, when he doesn't fold to emotional pressure, it sends a ripple through everything. She thought she understood. Most men would have folded by now. Most would have reached out, tried to explain, or asked for clarity, but you didn't. And it's not because you're cold. It's because you've reached the point where peace matters more than persuasion. You're no longer in the business of convincing someone to care. That's where Stoicism shows up. Not in being indifferent, but in knowing the difference between what deserves your energy and what drains it. Now she's replaying everything, your last conversation, the tone in your voice, even the way you looked at her. She's trying to figure out if she misread your detachment as disinterest or if it was something deeper. And the more quiet you are, the louder her thoughts become. Did he really let go? Was I not that important? Or is he just hiding how much he's hurting? But the reality is, you're not hiding anything. You're not waiting around. You're not playing games. You've simply withdrawn from chaos and returned to your center. You've chosen to redirect that emotional energy inward into building yourself, protecting your mental space, and keeping your standards high. Not every connection is meant to be pursued. And when she begins to feel that, truly feel that you've accepted the outcome without bitterness, that's when uncertainty takes hold of her. Picture this, she's checking her phone, hoping for your name to pop up. She's scrolling through memories, looking for evidence that you're still emotionally tied. But there's nothing. Just your absence and that unshakable calm you carry. That alone shifts the entire emotional dynamic. You see, when you stop chasing, it's not just silence, it's presence. A strong masculine presence that doesn't beg to be noticed, but is impossible to ignore. That's what she's thinking now. Not just does he miss me, but how is he so composed? And the answer, because you've made the rare decision to walk with dignity rather than run after uncertainty. That kind of strength doesn't scream, it leaves echoes. Number 9. Should I reach out first? You flip the dynamic, not through manipulation, but through genuine detachment. She starts to feel the imbalance. The space you left isn't empty, it's felt deeply. You didn't go silent to provoke her, you did it to return to your center. And now, she's the one feeling the weight of that silence. She begins to question what changed. At first, she might tell herself you're just busy or distracted. But as time passes, and you remain calm, composed, and unbothered, the silence becomes louder than any words you could have said. It's not passive aggression, it's presence. Your presence redirected inward. That's where Stoicism lives, in the decision to not be ruled by impulse, by reaction, and by the need to chase what's walking away. You didn't need to make an announcement. You simply stopped showing up where you no longer felt seen. And now, she starts to wonder, was I wrong to pull away? Did I expect him to chase me like everyone else? She begins replaying the last interaction, searching for clues. But the truth is, your absence speaks for itself. You're not reaching out, not because you're punishing her, but because you've reclaimed your dignity. You've realized that you don't need constant validation to know your worth. That's a shift few are prepared for, because it's rare. Think about it. How often does a man choose peace over proving himself? How often does someone step back, not out of ego, but out of clarity? You showed her something different. You responded with nothing, because not everything deserves your energy. That's Stoic discipline in real time. Seneca said it best. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it, and chasing someone who's unsure, that's time wasted. So now, she hesitates. The roles have reversed. Not because you played a trick, but because you stopped playing altogether. She feels the shift. She feels your absence. And in her silence, a new question lingers. One she never expected to ask herself. Should I reach out first? That's when you know you've changed the rhythm without ever raising your voice. Number 10. Maybe I took him for granted. This is the turning point. The moment she realizes you weren't trying to impress her. You were showing up genuinely. And when that stopped, she felt the loss. Not because you reminded her, but because you stopped reminding her. A Stoic man lets time reveal his value, not his words. See, in the beginning, your consistency felt so natural to her that she stopped noticing it. You showed up not to prove anything, but because it's simply who you are. You checked in, you cared, you remembered the little things. And she got used to that, so used to it, in fact, that she started to assume it would always be there. But what she didn't understand then is that even a good man, especially a grounded, self-respecting man, has limits. You weren't being dramatic. You weren't keeping score. You were just quietly reading the signs. And once it became clear that your effort wasn't being matched, you stepped back. And here's where the Stoic part comes in. You didn't announce your withdrawal. You didn't try to spark guilt or provoke a reaction. You simply chose peace over performance. Because a Stoic man doesn't try to force someone to appreciate him. He trusts that the truth eventually speaks louder than any argument. He doesn't chase the echo. He becomes the silence that lingers after everything else fades. Now, while she scrolls through old messages and replays old conversations, she starts to notice things she once overlooked. The way you listened when she vented. The calm tone you used when things got tense. The way you never competed for her attention. You just offered stability and walked away when it wasn't met with the same energy. That kind of man is rare, and when he's gone, his absence hits deeper than any dramatic goodbye. She might not say it out loud. She might not reach out yet, but make no mistake. She's thinking about it, about you, about how easy it was to take you for granted, and how quiet it got when you stopped trying to be seen. That's what happens when you stop chasing. You allow space for reality to speak. You let time do what? Pressure never. Good. And while she's now the one wondering if she misunderstood your presence, you remain unmoved. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned that self-respect isn't something you ever compromise. To be remembered, it's something you protect. To be at peace. Let that truth sink in, because it's one of the hardest lessons, and one of the most powerful. When a man walks away without bitterness, without noise, and without needing recognition, his absence becomes unforgettable. Not because he played a role, but because he was real. A world full of performances. So take a second to reflect. Have you ever felt this shift in yourself when you stopped trying to be enough for someone, and realized you always were? If that speaks to you, I invite you to leave a comment or simply type, "I chose self-respect over being understood." Your story matters. And if you're ready for what comes next, the moment where her silence begins to crack, stay with me. We're just getting to the part she didn't see coming. Number 11. Did I lose a man who actually had standards? And here it is, the final realization, the quiet echo that hits when the noise of the ego fades. She thought you'd circle back. She thought you'd fold. Reach out, explain yourself, ask what went wrong. But you didn't. You didn't chase because your love isn't tied to desperation. It's tied to discernment, and that's what sets you apart. Most guys get emotionally hijacked when a woman starts acting distant. They plead, they perform, they drop their boundaries just to feel wanted again. But you did the exact opposite. You stayed in control. You didn't fight to prove your value. You lived it. That's not indifference, that's discipline. The kind of discipline Stoicism teaches. Control what you can, accept what you can't, and never give away your peace to someone who doesn't value it. She may not have understood it at first. In fact, your silence might have looked like coldness. But with time, real, uninterrupted time, it starts to look like clarity. And then it hits her. Maybe you weren't just another guy hoping to win her over. Maybe you were the standard she wasn't ready for. Maybe you were the one man who knew when to stop giving. Not because he didn't feel, but because he refused to feel small. She replays it all. The way you carried yourself, the calm in your voice, the lack of chaos when you pulled away. You didn't slam the door. You just closed it quietly. And somehow that stillness makes more noise than any argument could have. She's used to men bending, not standing. You stood. And now that you're no longer orbiting her world, she starts to question if she lost something rare. You didn't chase her because you hold standards, not conditions. You know what you offer, and if someone can't recognize it, you don't campaign for their awareness. That kind of energy is unforgettable. Not loud, not boastful, but felt deeply. That's what Stoic presence is. It's not that you're hard to get. It's that you're impossible to replace. And now, she knows she didn't just lose a man. She lost a man who knew himself. And no matter how much time passes, that kind of loss lingers. So what does she really think when you don't chase her? She thinks more than she ever expected. Because when a man steps back, not to play games, but to protect his peace, it forces a kind of reflection no words can spark. This isn't about ego. This is about essence. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, and let me know what moment in your life taught you the power of not chasing. I'd love to read your story. And don't forget, sometimes your absence is the only explanation she'll ever need. Until next time, stay grounded, stay strong, stay stoic.